Thank you all for tuning in. This is Selena and
Iman.
together we make you plus happy. Each week we bring you someone who challenges us to define success and happiness on our own terms with a dose of laughter.
Remember to like and subscribe at you plus happy. You can also follow us on Instagram at you plus happy.
Hi, Iman.
Hey, Selena.
Anything fun or exciting this week?
Not fun or exciting, but I have started I guess you would say like financial literacy thing where I'm just educating myself on finances. So that's been interesting. I'm realizing how much I don't know. So I have some goals for this year, so I'm excited to reach them by December. That's the plan.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you? Anything fun or exciting?
No, I had a doctor's appointment actually today, and it was the offices in the hospital. And I have to remind myself to prep myself when I go out because I was like really frustrated with like the mask thing and how many people are allowed in the elevator and the temperature taking and the hand sanitizer. And I'm like, what are they going to do if I have a temperature? I'm in here to see the doctor. Like, they've been taking temperatures at like each door. And then I tried to get on the elevator and it was 3 people on and she was like, there are only 3. And I was like, oh my God. So I had to remember to use like the things that we discuss in our podcast and like my reflection. And it's not always easy. So I don't have the answers. I still snap. I still get mad, which I always will. I'm a human. But I was like, ugh. And then the guy was like, hey, you put hand sanitizer on? I was like, I just put some on. And I literally had like, y'all want me to put it on at every door? I just was like, woosah. And it was just very like, yeah. So all the regulations and rules, I just have to remind myself to not get so frustrated. And that is just prep for it.
Yeah. Give yourself extra time. They do that out here too. And it's like, what would be a quick in and out? You gotta just add some extra time.
And I also just thought it was dumb. Like, why are you taking my temperature at the doctor's? I'm about to go see the doctor. If I have a temperature now, I can't see my doctor. What are you talking about? Like, it was stupid.
Anyway. They're gonna quarantine you in a room, probably.
I'm just like, I'm gonna be in my own room anyway. All the same. Anyway, so this week I'm so excited about my guest, because I get to interview Iman, who is usually my co-host, but I never interviewed her. So I'm excited to hear what she's going to say. So Iman, as many of you probably don't know, is an international social worker and obviously the co-host of You Plus Happy podcast. She earned her master's degree in social work at the University of Southern California. In her spare time, loves to hang out at the beach with her pups, Lily and Noodles, enjoy nature, and she is obsessed with tacos, like for real, y'all. So let's get into it. Without further ado, I'm welcoming Iman. Hi again.
What'd you say?
Hi again. How are you?
Oh, hi. Long time no see.
Yes. All right. Well, do you have any questions before we get started?
Thanks for putting me on the spot this week. Love it. Absolutely love it.
No. I did put her on the spot, y'all. I convinced her to do this.
A little bit.
But anyway, so this I actually don't know about you. Why did you go into social work? How'd you get started in that field?
Yeah. So I didn't think I knew that it was social work, but like growing up, my parents were foster parents. So I grew up, like it's just me and my brother, but I grew up with just a lot of youth around me and I didn't really understand. I was just like, oh, they're just coming and staying with us for a little bit and then they go. So I think that was my first introduction of like my parents being foster parents and really taking in even kids in the neighborhood and being very active in community. So I was just surrounded by it. And then I was like, I started off as pre-vet. So I wanted to be a veterinarian. I love animals. And then went to college and was like, this isn't really for me. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Sat down with the counselor, was kind of going over all the things that I enjoyed doing. And she's like, well, why don't you just do social work? And yeah, kind of switched my major in my senior year of college. It's fun. Gave me an extra year. And yeah, that's just how I ended up in social work.
So when you started doing social work, how did you know that was it though? Like,
so I started at a middle school. So I love working with kids. I love developing programs. So I wasn't really sure. I knew I liked helping people. I knew I liked working with people. But it wasn't until I got my first job out of grad school that I was like, okay, this is where I need to be. I think I really like being able to look at a problem and try and figure out solutions or ways to make it better. And that's my first job for 8 years. That's what I did. It was like working with families, looking at gaps in services, and really trying to find either resources or ways to, make lives a little bit better. And I like being able to see the end result. So that was like my happy moment when I'm just like, this kid was failing and now they're not necessarily a student, but they're a C level. And, I played a part in getting them to that point.
what was the difference? But what was the difference in school? So when you were in school you said you were pre-vet, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But while you were in school, you knew like, okay, I need to reassess this. But then when you switched your major while you were in school to social work, what made it click like while you were in college before you started your job?
So I didn't, okay, so so I switched majors in undergrad. I went from pre-vet to African studies, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because that was my minor. So I had a major in pre-vet and then a minor in African studies. And at that point I was like, I don't want to be in school longer. So I just switched my minor to my major. But like towards the end of school, I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do with this degree? Like, I love the classes that I took. I love learning about different cultures. But I was like, but what am I? Like, I don't want to work as a historian. I don't want to, a lot of that is like working in museums, doing like history focus. I was like, I know I don't want to do that. And that conversation about being a social work happened towards graduation. And yeah, I don't know. I think it was just a fit. Like after having that conversation, I did some research. I was looking at what social workers can do. Yeah, and I don't think I really knew until I actually started social work and was like in the field working with families and children.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. So it wasn't ever a point where I was just like, oh, this is for me until I actually got in there and was doing the work.
Yeah. Okay. And then this is different, but what made you want to do the podcast? I know we've talked about this, but really, I guess I've never asked you like, how do you keep going? And like, what made you want to do it?
Yeah. I think it goes back to naturally wanting to help people in some way. So I felt like the podcast was a way to have a platform where people can listen to other people's stories, hear ways that they've overcome some challenges, their definitions of success. So we've talked about this, like we're both really big on just living life on our own terms, having that freedom and flexibility to kind of do what we want to do. So yeah, I think before talking to you about it, I hadn't really thought about doing a podcast. But then when we started talking about it and like the platform and kind of what we wanted it to become, I was like, oh, okay. Like I like this idea and enjoyed it so far. And of course I wouldn't, we say this all the time, like if it wasn't for you holding me accountable, yeah, I probably would have got through the first episode and been like, all right, that was fun. I tried it. I'm done.
And along your journey and whatever you want to talk about, what's been like the biggest challenges? How did you get through it? And I have to imagine in social work too that there's a lot of things that most people wouldn't be able to handle.
Yeah. Um, I think once I got into the field, one of my biggest challenges, especially in what I'm doing now, is um, like I mentioned, my goal is really like I'm like, oh, I want to help people. I want to make an impact, make a change. But sometimes when you're working in a very broken system, you realize there's only so much you can do kind of within that structure. So I think that's been my biggest kind of like aha moment in the field, and also the biggest challenge of being like, because I used to get really frustrated where I'm just like, well, why can't I just do this or put this system in place? And it's like, no, that's not how we do it. There's like so much red tape
Mm.
that you have to kind of, I don't know, go through. That was a bit challenging where I'm just like, well, in my head, I'm like, this is just this quick fix. And all we have to do is like do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, no, we can't do it that way because we have systems and regulations in place. Um, I don't know. And how I overcame that, I feel like I don't know.
Well, how you like deal with that frustration? Like, how do you process it? What's
Yeah.
because every field has pros and cons,
Mm-hmm.
and like, how do you deal with that? The cons of your field.
Yeah. I think part of it is a little bit of acceptance of like, all right, this is the framework that I have to work in, and I can only do so much within this framework. But I think that's also a reason why I want to eventually branch out and do my own thing,
Mhm.
because I don't like confinement in any in work in life. So I'm like, all right, this is definitely a situation where I'm learning a lot about the field and doing as much as I can, but eventually I do want to start my own thing so I don't have those limitations. So I can be like, this is something that needs to be fixed, and like I have that freedom and flexibility to just work on that problem. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does, and I like that. Like, a part of it is acceptance, and I think even not with work, but like in life, that there's parts of there's things I want, and there's parts of it that I'm like I don't agree with, but I
Mm-hmm.
can't do anything about it. Just like when I was talking about the certification last week, and it's like I don't agree with that money grab part of it, but I want the certification, so I have to kind of
Mm-hmm.
roll with. You have to accept all of it and find a way to deal with it so you don't get so upset. Otherwise, I feel like you'll be so mad all the time if you focus on the bad part of whatever you're dealing with. Not that your social work's a little different because you do have to focus on the problems, but the red tape and all that you have to work within.
Yeah.
Um, and I know we've talked a lot about like we've talked about your job and some of the things you've seen, and I know you've seen some tough situations, some tough things, and it's like, how do you decompress from that? How do you not let that sink in or get cynical and stay like optimistic? Because I know I'm around you, and well, I'm not as much, but I talk to you a lot,
Yeah.
and you're still very positive. And you don't ever seem like you take it. Like I've met other social workers through you that I feel like it really takes a toll on them emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I don't know what happens behind closed doors, but I don't feel like you are carrying that around with you. It seems like you know how to separate it really well.
Yeah.
And I think that can be beneficial to anyone in any field and in life, how you separate and compartmentalize. Um, so how do you do it?
Um, so one of the things I value is balance. And we've
Mhm.
talked about this. Like, so I'm very like I can't be that person that like goes to work and then I come home and I'm talking about work and then I'm like that's yeah. So I'm like, okay, I work from this time to this time, and that's where all my time and energy is. But I do make sure I have time for like that social aspect to like hang out with friends, to catch up with like family back home, and then also time for myself. So I'm naturally an introvert. So I'm like, I like to go out. I like to socialize with other people, but I need that me time. And I realize that. So I'll make sure that in the course of a week that I have that social time, that work time, but then also that me time where I can just be alone, write, read, do whatever. Like sometimes I just turn on music and dance by myself. And I'm just like, this is just what I need right now. Um, yeah, so I think balance. And I feel like whenever that balance is like I don't have that balance, like I'm doing too much of one thing, I can feel it right away and I like get anxious. I'm just like, something is off. So yeah, I think that's been the biggest thing is like finding time for all three of those things
Mhm.
on a consistent basis.
And it sounds like paying attention to knowing what you need and paying attention to it and listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I always say this, but no one needs my approval, but I really like that. And then, and two, a lot of people, this is along with that. A lot of people want to like start their own thing, have a side hustle. And when we first started this, I wasn't working a full-time job, and now I am, and I'm working a full-time job and doing the podcast and other things. And it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot to manage, and it can be taxing, like just
Mm-hmm.
mentally. And how do you like show up? Like you show up for the podcast in all ways. You show up for, I'm imagining at your work, like your day
Mm-hmm.
job, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
um and then you still have a social life, you still work out, like taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
um so how are you, like how do you not get burnt out? Because I struggle with that sometimes.
Yeah, no, I do too. Like just this past week was actually really hard because I was working a lot more than I wanted to. And it was
Mhm,
just people called out, people were on holidays. So, whoever's left has to kind of pick up the pieces.
mhm.
Um,
Here.
yeah, so I feel like I do get burnt out and I'm like, I don't watch, well, I don't watch that much TV, but yesterday, which was going into the weekend, I came home, showered, and literally just sat and watched. I ate pizza, whole pizza, by the way, by myself. And don't judge me.
I
This
can't
is
judge
so out of
nobody ever.
character. It's a little bit out of character for me and just like turned on Netflix. But I'm like, I was so exhausted from the week and just, I'm like, I don't want to think about anything. I don't want to necessarily like talk because I've been talking to people all week. Yeah, and I just kind of vegged out. But I feel like when I do have those moments, it's usually like a day, and then I'm like, all right, Iman, time to get
Mhm,
back into it. So I do have those days where I'm just like, all right, I'm just gonna come home and not do anything. I think sometimes I feel like I always have to go, like if it's not working on a project or working on a podcast or like that checklist, sometimes I'm like, I'm just gonna go home and do nothing and not feel guilty about it. Because
mhm,
there was a time where if I was doing nothing, I'm just like, I should be doing something.
mhm.
Like I'm wasting time right now. But I think I've accepted that sometimes it's okay to just hang out and do nothing.
I'm so glad you said that. And I know for me, I used to feel like that too. But now when I have those days, they're, first of all, they're planned usually. And then
Uh,
two, not too far in advance, because I don't know when I'm gonna get burnt out, but
yeah.
I give myself that green light. And then
Mhm.
also it's I felt like I earned it. So it's like I paid my dues for this day. Like
Mhm.
and I have those days too. And again, I'm so glad you said that, because I feel like amongst, there's somebody at my work was talking about toxic hustle culture, and I had
Mhm.
never heard that, and I was like, it's so true that this hustling thing can get really toxic, and we're not taking care of ourselves. And then to bring up TV, I feel like also in our, like in the intellectual world, or just the success world, like watching TV is so frowned upon. But I feel like you said, it can be a really healthy balance and a healthy, like, just let go kind of thing, not sit there and watch TV every day like you said, but to have a day. I remember my uncle, who I really respect, said, I'm on vacation next week and I'm gonna spend one of those days watching TV and I don't care. Like, and he's a very smart man. He reads a lot and all that. So, but he understood that that was good for his psyche. So
Mhm.
we don't have to demonize TV and throw it away. I really like that you said that, but
I think
um,
it goes back to that, like having a balance, like not
mhm,
being too much of one thing. Um, so
yeah. So we always talk about success. That's why we
yeah,
started the podcast. And
it is.
so, and I don't think I've ever asked you this. What is your definition of success?
Yeah. I feel like we've talked about it, but you haven't specifically asked.
Yeah.
I think success for me is freedom. Like freedom to do sounds a little bit selfish, but do what I want to do when I want to do it. But
Mhm.
I also realize like within that freedom, there has to be a certain level of, I don't know, like structure, if that makes sense. So in order for me to, for example, wake up when I want to wake up, I need to be in a position where I'm not relying on someone else to pay my salary every year or every month, or in order for me to be like, oh, I'm just going to go on a trip for a month or like go back home and visit family for a month. Like I need to be able to set myself up so that that flexibility is there. I'm not having to ask someone like, hey, can I, use my vacation time or my sick leave so that I can go see my friends and family back home. And that's something that I'm like, I don't like. I like structure, but I like structure leading to ultimate freedom, if that makes sense. And I'm
Mhm.
happy when I'm just like, I don't have anyone else telling me how and when I can do things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that way too. I know exactly what you mean, and I'm sure a lot of people do. But so on this journey, and what have been your failures? What did you consider a failure? And how do you remedy that?
Yeah. I'd say, I haven't really thought about that. Because I feel like there's things that haven't worked out the way that I wanted them to.
Mhm,
But I've always been very reflective. So it's like, okay, this didn't work out. Like, why didn't it work out? And like, what did I learn from it?
mhm,
So I'm trying to think of a time where I really felt, um, I guess a little bit, there was a little bit of failure when I didn't go through with the pre-vet major, just
mhm.
because it was something that I had wanted to do since I was like 9. And I was like, oh, this is like, I'm going to be a veterinarian. This is my path. This is my calling. And that's all I knew up until maybe like 23. So that's a long time to hold on to an idea of like what you needed to do and who you should be.
Mhm.
And then getting in those classes and realizing kind of what it actually means to be a vet. Um, it was definitely a reality check for me and something where I'm just like, it took me a while to give up on that idea. And when I did feel like, dang, I failed because, all my family, all my friends that had like grown up with me was like, oh, Iman's gonna be a veterinarian. It was just like everyone knew that. So I felt like there was like I let them down, not just myself. So that was the time where I'm just like, okay, I failed. Um, But looking back, I'm just like, I think I was holding on to an idea, like an expectation of myself, as opposed to like what it is that's really going to make me happy in the long term.
You were holding on to an image that you had in your mind, but not looking at
Mhm.
reality.
Yeah.
Is that how you got over it? Like that was just an image in my mind.
um, I think I got over that idea when I got into social work and was like, I was so passionate about, um, hopefully none of my coworkers, not so much my current job. I'm learning a lot, but like the first job I had, I was so passionate and so just happy about going in and doing the work. That was kind of my shift where I was like, oh, like I can be passionate about more than one thing. Um, and for a long time, I was just like, no, this is my passion and this is all I can do. But when I realized like, oh, like there's this other part of me that I really enjoy doing, I think that's what helped me it's kind of like a relationship where you're really sad about leaving someone, and then you meet an amazing person after, and you're like, oh, that wasn't that, that wasn't that good. So that definitely helped. I yeah.
And what was your biggest takeaway from that? I guess that shift.
Mhm.
Like, is it something you carry with you now? Because I know you said that happened when you were like 23-ish.
Mhm.
So is that like something you still carry with you today from that experience?
Yeah, I think just being more open. Um, I think when I was younger, I was so like focused, but to the point where I had blinders to anything else. It was just like, nope, this is what I want. And everything I do is going to lead up to this endpoint. Whereas now I think I'm a little bit, well, actually a lot more open, where I'm just like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is my focus, but I'm still open to other possibilities and other options. Whereas I think before, because I was so focused, I didn't even see the other options that were available. So yeah, I think that's been the biggest takeaway is just being open to, you know, not being so narrow-minded for sure.
Mm, I love that. I just keep hearing the word rigid, like the rigidity, and like you kind of
Mhm.
became more flexible. Um, so who or what has been your biggest motivation up until this point?
I feel like I've been asked this question before.
Not by me.
I think I have, but it's okay. It probably wasn't on camera. My biggest motivation, um, I think part of it is my family. So
Mhm,
like seeing, I think one, I come from a very supportive, like my parents have ever always been very supportive of me, which
mhm,
has helped. So I've never, I think the rigid part of me was just something, I don't know where that came from, but they've always been very much like, oh yeah, whatever you want to do, like we'll support you. So I think that has helped along my path. Um, and just being very open. Like even the fact that I'm all the way on the other side of the world. And when I brought it to them, obviously they're like, all right, we're gonna miss you, but go live your life, enjoy
mhm,
yourself. So I think that has helped, always knowing that regardless of what other people might think, like they always have my back in my decisions. If that
mhm,
makes sense. Um, and then also too, just for not wanting to be, and you talked about this a little bit before, but not wanting to just be average. Like I've
mhm,
never wanted to just work a 9 to 5, come home, cook, feed the kids, like that. What is it? What's the American, like the house and the picket fence and the dog? I'm like,
mhm,
that's never been my goal. So
mhm.
the more that I can do things that allow me to move away from that idea of like this is what society says you should be or should be doing, has definitely been motivation. It's a
Yeah.
big world. I'm like, I want to see and do as much as I can.
Mm, mm. And it's good that you don't, not saying like good or bad, but it's nice, nice reminder to remember, nice reminder to remember, not to take that for granted, like that you have a supportive family, because I'm sure that's just really helpful whenever you have support.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what you've met a lot of amazing people, I'm sure. Iman is very not humble. What's the word when it's like not bashful, but like I guess
Um,
humble about all the things she's done and all the places she's lived, and like she's done a lot of amazing things. But out of all those people you've met, what's the best advice you've received?
um, well, so I would say like the best advice, it didn't actually come from someone I know personally, but it's someone that it's just something that sticks. Because I feel like there's a lot of great advice that I've been given over the years, but like in that moment, I'm like, oh yeah, that's so great, but it doesn't stick with me. Whereas
I
like,
set the question up for you to answer from somebody. I'm just kidding.
Well, I know them. I knew them in another life. But I guess one of the things that have stuck with me is just it's very simple, but it's like don't sweat the small stuff because it's all
Mm,
small stuff. And that's something that I remind myself daily, because I think it's so easy to get so caught up in the here and now and like everything that you have to do or everything that you're doing or um, just the pressures of day to day life that when you really take a step back and think about it, it's like this is so small in the big scheme of everything. And I think that's helped me a lot just in life where I'm just like, okay, I still have my health, I have my family, I have my friends, I have a roof over my head, I have food. It's like all this other stuff really doesn't matter. Like if I only had 24 hours to live, like I wouldn't care about this. So
mm.
that is something that has stuck with me and that I continue to like remind myself whenever I'm getting a little bit stressed out. I'm just like, okay, mom, this is so small in the bigger scheme of life.
You're so wise.
um,
What what is something you hope people say about you when you're not in the room? And I know you always say, this is such good advice. Iman always says, pay attention to the energy you bring to a situation. So, what energy do you hope you're bringing? What do you?
um, so I've been told this a few times too, is that like I'm naturally calm natured.
Mhm.
So I think that when I'm, especially in situations that are high stress, that I tend to like calm, not even doing it on purpose, but I've been told that like I will help people calm down
Mm.
just because of my calm nature. Like, but I think sometimes inside I'm just like, okay, I may be a little bit stressed, but I'm like trying to, I don't know. I guess it doesn't show on the outside. And I'm can kind of reflect and be like, all right, this is stressful, but like, how can we fix it? Um, but what I hope people say is that, like, I want people to feel welcome, like that like when people are around me, they feel welcome, that they are feel heard. Because I do try to, as much as possible, be a good listener, be a good friend. So I do want people to feel welcomed by me.
Oh, well, you do. I can speak from experience. I remember me and him went on our first date. No, our first friend. It was the first time we went out to eat together for the first time. That's why I said date, but it was like
Okay.
a friend date. And I was talking and talking and talking, of course, but I usually don't do that with people I just meet. But I
Mhm.
felt so you were so easy to talk to, and I felt heard, I felt
Aw,
understood. So I was
okay.
like, I just let it all out. I was like, but it was so refreshing to have that experience. And I know when you met my partner at the time in DC, I felt like he felt that same sense because he doesn't usually talk to people that much. Like we went out for drinks and he was like giving you so much. And I was like, this is
You
not his
sure it
first.
wasn't the alcohol?
No, I've been around him with alcohol plenty of times. He's friendly, he's kind, but he wouldn't have. Yeah, he was just because I really I think you do create that, and
Mhm.
when you come to when I would go to your house, you're very welcoming and all that. So I think checkmate, like or whatever, like or box check, box check. I'll learn how to talk one day. Um, so yeah, I mean I can't speak for everyone, but that's what I think. I think you're accomplishing it.
Thank you.
So we talked about what it means to be successful. What does it mean for you to be happy? Like when do you feel happiest?
Um, I'm I'm happiest when I'm on the beach,
I was
to
about
be
to
honest.
say on the beach eating tacos.
Yes. Yes. Preferably with like a margarita or something in my hand too. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Ever since I was young, like something about just being by water and by the ocean has just been my happy place. Like I love, yeah. Like I love everything about it. Like I love the smell, I love the sand, I love the sound of just the waves. It's very calming for me, and I think it helps put things in perspective. So like if I'm having a really stressful week, going to the beach for even like 20 minutes, just it's like calming. So I think that's when I'm happiest. And I like to go, sounds like a loner, but I actually like to go to the beach alone, just so there isn't any interruption. I can just kind of be in my zone. That's why I think where I'm at now, as much as I do like Australia, I'm so inland, like the closest beach is like an hour and a half away. And I'm just like, oh, it's so hard. Going from LA where there's beaches like everywhere, to being like, all right, I have to plan like a day to go to the beach, has been a bit challenging. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and in the beach for
The
sure.
beaches are amazing. I see how people could become beach bums.
Hmm.
It's like I could see that happening to me.
Yeah, like just give me tacos in the beach and I'm good.
Listen, have me some wine, a book, the beach, music. It's everything. Um, so they say your inner circle is super important, which it is. Like they said, the five people you hang around the most, you're likely to be the same around the same weight as them and make around the same amount of money.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So that's a real thing. Look it up, y'all. So because we need to get some more baller friends. So
Mhm.
um, but so what qualities do those people have to be in your inner circle? Not some associates, but
Yeah. Inner circle, definitely like a positive outlook on life. I can't be around Debbie Downers or like woe is me all the time.
mhm.
Um, Humor. I like to laugh. I like to be silly. Um, Hence why we're friends.
Rude. I have
um,
more to bring to the table.
um, yeah, so definitely have a sense of humor. I like someone that can challenge me, um, but like in a not in an aggressive way where it's just like, no, I'm right, you're wrong. But I think challenge me in the way of like allowing me to see things from a different perspective. Um, Someone that I can disagree with. And what's the term? I always say this, we can agree to disagree. So
Mhm.
like I don't necessarily need to be on the same page with my friend, like my close friends all the time, but as long as I feel respected, that I'm like heard and you understand my point of view and vice versa. Um, that's big. And you know this one is um, dependable. Like if you say you're gonna do something, I need you to do it. Like I can't deal with flaky people. That's one. That's one of both of our pet peeves. Like,
Preach. Listen, don't play with my time. I don't care. I don't care if it was one of my days to watch TV and eat. Don't play with it.
like that, yeah, it's so important. 'Cause, yeah, um, I think those are the main things, traits.
Mhm. I didn't know those, and I think they're all really good. Not again, no one need, I don't know why I always say that, but I do. I love that. This is a question I've been thinking about a lot, and I was like, I wanted to do this exercise where I write my younger self a letter. I haven't
Mhm.
done it. What would you tell your younger self?
Mhm. Like, what age are we talking? Like,
So when you're whatever age your mind goes to first.
okay. I think so. I think of like young, like maybe like 9, 10.
Okay.
I think I would tell my younger self not to be so fearful. Like I feel like as a child, I was very, and not to their fault, but I think I was very shielded and like guarded a lot. And I think I kind of internalized that as like, oh, the world is a bit of a scary place where I need to be protected from. And it took me a long time. And I think there's still some like fear that pops up every once in a while, but I think it took me a long time to be like, oh no, it's not as scary as I thought. So I think I would have told my youngest self to just be more courageous and just like take more risk. I was like that, I was that child that didn't really do anything out like risky. So I'm like, I rarely got in trouble. Rarely you like, I was just like, oh, I just have to do things. I think that's why I'm so like, nope, I want to do everything on my own. Cause I was really like, got to follow all the rules, got to do everything right. Got to stay in this neat little box. So yeah, I would have told myself younger self to be more risky and just step outside of the norm. And it's okay if you get in trouble or things don't work out the way they should have. Because it took me a while to get to that point.
Wow. And that's probably why you value freedom so much now. And you do all these things.
Yeah.
Wow. It all comes together.
All comes full circle. 100%.
Look at me. I'm your therapist now.
I see you.
Look at me. I'm just kidding. um, so we're winding down. What piece of advice? I know we talked a lot about advice today, but what piece of advice would you give? And as your friend, I know you give a lot of really great advice. I come to you for a lot of things. And I take heed to your words. So listen, y'all. What piece of advice would you give listeners?
I would say the biggest piece of advice is just step outside of your comfort zone. So do things that make you uncomfortable and I know it's a little cliche, but like get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because I feel like once I started doing that, that's where I grew the most. That's where I learned the most. And that's what eventually made me the happiest. Like even me being like living outside of the United States, like I would have never done this 10 years ago. I'd be like, no, there's too much, like I would have talked myself out of it. So just, step outside your comfort zone and be okay with not feeling safe all the time.
Wow.
Wow.
No, really, because I like the way you worded it. But can I add to that something Maya Angelou said about courage? Ask how you get, because like, how do you get to the big stuff? Like moving across the world, right? The earth. The world. So you build it little by little, right?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I hadn't been to Zumba in a long time, and my instinct was to go to the back of the room, and I was like, no, go to the front. That's where you want to go. Go on up there now. So I was nervous. I messed up a lot. Like I was shaking a little bit because I'm like, all other students gonna be like, why is she going in the front? Like she ain't even that good, because I hadn't taken this instructor's class. But I just said that to say like practicing it, right? Practice the little stuff. Don't just jump out there and move across because you're gonna have anxiety and like.
Exactly. It's like building that muscle memory. It's like, oh, I've been uncomfortable before and things were okay. And then the next time do something a little bit more challenging. 100%. No, I definitely wouldn't have. I built up to this for sure. 100%.
Yeah, so I just wanted to remind people of that. Like, and I'll just do little things not every day, but every time I see the opportunity to get uncomfortable and really just throw myself in the water or whatever, like, and just figure out how to swim. I think that's really helpful. So I don't have any more questions. Do you have anything else to say, Iman?
No, well, this is a perfect example of me allowing myself to be uncomfortable. This was not planned.
No.
So we just went with it, and thank you for pushing me to be, on the other side of You Plus Happy.
And thank you for doing it and being open to it. And this is my first time I ever interviewed someone by myself. And even though I know you, it was still very different. So I'm sorry, listeners, thank you for pulling through with me. And, and we'll get better and better. So, but I'm so happy I got to interview you, and I didn't know a lot of these things. So, but will you close out with me? Will you help me close out?
Yes, I will help you close out.
Okay. Again, thank you, Iman, for sharing your time with us and inspiring our listeners to redefine success for themselves. Remember, you can find our podcast every week, anywhere you get your podcasts, and follow us on YouTube and Instagram at You Plus Happy.
And always, we appreciate you listeners. We could not do this without you. Remember to like and comment and share this episode. Please leave a review, and we always love your feedback.
And we'll see you next week, same time, same place. And we have our guests say our tagline, which is, you know it, Iman.
We'll show you our definition of success if you show us yours.
Ooh, you got it on the first try.